Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Transporter Podcast presented by NoContextCFB. We are here. It's the middle of March. College football may not be on the front of your mind, but it's going to be on your mind today. We have a lot of great stuff to go over. My name is Andrew. Joined by me is Dylan, Brian, and Adam. How are y'all doing today?
Good. Right.
Doing good. Busy weekend. Got college basketball, but we were talking about football, but I'm doing good.
Dylan, how you doing?
I'm great. It's been like you said, it's been a really long week. Gotten very, very little sleep in the last couple of days. But I'm excited to finally be back on the pod. It feels like it's been a couple months at the most since I've been on.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but glad to have you back. And like we said, it may be basketball season, and only I believe two of our teams are in March Madness, and they're both Adams. Because Georgia didn't make it, Oregon is in the NIT, and Minnesota sucks. So that sucks. But we're a football podcast, and we've already started talking about basketball. That's what March does to you. Let's just go straight to spring ball. Spring ball's already started for most programs. So one thing we want to talk about is one question we have for each of our teams. Obviously, Adam has Texas and Houston. Brian has Georgia, I Minnesota. And you might be able to tell that Dylan's an Oregon fan. So, Adam, let's start with you. Texas, what's the big question there?
For me and most, the big question for Texas is, can they develop the talent that they always get? It's been like that for really since Mac Brown left. We always have a top 10, top 5 recruiting class, but they never progress past what they are when they arrive on campus. So once again, Texas, top 5 recruiting class, brought a new coach who is apparently a guru at developing offensive talent. So that's a big question. And that happens in the spring. You don't really get better once the season starts. You are who you are. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with them. Hopefully it works out, because I've been talking a lot about Texas being back. And might be embarrassing if we go out there and we lose week 1, week 2, and week 3. So, but I'm banking on it that they're going to figure it out. We'll be back. For Houston, I'm excited, man. I think we're going to be back on top of the American. We got Clayton Tune back. Really, it's just a matter of, can we just keep it rolling? If we just keep that train moving, I think we'll be fine. I'm really excited for them too. I think both my teams are going to be good. We'll see what happens.
I think it's safe to say that Houston might have a better outlook right now than Texas. But you know what? Texas, you've been saying it, might be back. It might be. Not 100%. I know the hat says Texas is back, or just the Texas logo, but the Texas logo right now stands for Texas is back.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brian, let's go to you. The hat is kind of ironic. I'm just realizing your hat is a little ironic.
Why?
Well, you know what? I'm dumb. I needed sleep. I need sleep. I read that as the Alabama A.
Come on. You really? That is just disrespectful.
It said 2021 champs. It's the A.
Yeah, I had a decent few months from October to January. So this is my other team that won a championship. Not to brag or anything, but yeah. Obviously with Georgia coming off a championship, there's a lot. You can go into spring ball a little bit differently this time around. You're so used to them coming in after losing another, the bad loss, or another, heartbreaking loss that we've had the last few years before this past year. So, but with it coming off a championship, it's a little bit differently. It's got a little bit more of an intrigue than anything. I think the biggest thing right now for us, for Georgia is the revamped coaching staff. We lost a lot of coaches. Matt Luke left. We got new receivers coach, new offensive line coach, new defensive coordinators. So it's a lot of turnover in the coaching staff. And then also, even just the guys, we had our pro day today, and we saw what Georgia players did at the combine, and they follow that up at the pro day. So we're losing a bunch of good players. So it's interesting to see what that's going to look like in the spring and who steps up. I think right now the biggest question that I have is the backup quarterback position. We have 3 capable guys. Gunnar Stockton is an incoming freshman. Brock Vandegrift on it. He's a second-year 5-star. He was a second-rated quarterback coming out of high school in his class. And then Carson Beck, who's been with us for a couple of years now, and he was looking great. He was ripping it out there. Today he was participating at the pro day with some of the receivers. He was the one throwing them the ball, and so it's very interesting. Obviously, Stetson Bennett is coming back, and for the first time in his career, he's coming in as a starter, the set starter. He doesn't have to worry about JT Daniels or anything like that. He is a starter. He won the championship. He's earned that role as being the starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs. But it's going to be interesting to see, because I'm curious to see how short his leash is, and if Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift have an amazing spring, will they even consider going into the fall as one of those guys overtaking Stetson? And I'd like to see what Stetson can do as the clear-cut number one. He doesn't have to be looking over his shoulder anymore. He can see what we can do there. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen. I think the most exciting part, or the most intriguing part, is the backup quarterback position, because obviously quarterback is probably the most important position on the field, and without a good quarterback, you're not going to win very much. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to play out.
You talked about losing coordinators. Dan Lanning left. Now he's at Oregon. Dylan,
yeah.
What's the biggest question at Oregon?
Great segue.
Man, that was such a privileged answer from Brian, coming from a national championship team. Who's our backup quarterback? Really? That's the question. I mean, there's so many programs that wish that they could have just that as their primary question. For Oregon, completely new coaching staff. Dan Lanning is his first time as a head coach. Top to bottom, pretty much everything's new. I think in terms of personnel, I think the biggest question that is going to be on everybody's mind is, how do you replace Kayvon Thibodeau? How do you replace that production off the edge? And I think there's a pretty steep drop off in terms of talent along the defensive line off the edge. And I think a couple guys that could step in are Braden Swinson and DJ Johnson. It depends on what the defense looks like, if they're more of a 3-4 or a 4-3, but I think both of those guys could be in particular, some of the top candidates. I think one of the other ones is going to be, how do they utilize all the talent that they have as pass catchers? Last year's offense with Anthony Brown was just so limited. The passing game was really tough to watch, just all the dink and dunk stuff, and just leaving Anthony Brown out there when games were just over by halftime. That was really frustrating to see, but there was so much talent that they brought in the last couple of years that we just didn't really get to see. And now, Kenny Dillingham comes in and he wants to have this explosive up-tempo, 80 plays a game kind of offense that, of course, focuses on running the ball down your throat, but, throwing the ball downfield, something that Oregon fans have been used to for a long time up until the last few years. So I'm excited to see what the offensive identity and defensive identity looks like, because when you have a brand new coaching staff, you have to figure that out, and spring is a great way to start learning. But I like where they're at. I've gotten to talk to Dan Lanning a couple times during the press conferences and hear what he's thinking, and it seems like everybody's bought in on his vision and the coaching staff's vision. So it's going to be fun to see.
It's always interesting to see those first-year head coaches, especially at big programs like Oregon, is seeing what they do, how the players kind of react, making sure what you said, everybody's bought in. So that's very good to hear. As for Minnesota, all Minnesota fans are going to agree with me. Can Kirk Shiraka bring back that offense? Because that offense last year made me want to puke, made me want to gouge my eyes out. It made me want to not watch football. It was almost as bad as Iowa's offense. Not as bad, because that's not possible. But what Mike Sanford Jr. did to that offense was, this is going to sound kind of disgraceful. It was disgusting. It was awful. Tanner Morgan was one of the most, if not the most efficient quarterback in 2019, after 2020 being a year we don't talk about anymore. He didn't look good. He didn't look good at all. He was not efficient at all. He was throwing bad interceptions, making bad decisions. Now, yes, he did lose talent. He lost Tyler Johnson, Rashad Bateman. He lost Mo Ibrahim this year. And he's going to lose O'Keefe, who was a very good blocking tight end. I want to see what Kirk's got for this offense. Can he bring back 2019? No, that's not possible because we don't have the playmakers at wide receiver. Yes, Chris Almond-Bell is very good. Dalen Wright's very good. Mike Brown-Stevens, he's a good deep threat occasionally. But I want something consistent. I don't need it to be something great. I need it to be consistent because that defense is going to play well because we have one of the best defensive coordinators in the country in Joe Rossi, who, by the way, I'm shocked he didn't get a different job. Being the defensive coordinator at Minnesota isn't the most highly touted job, but he was getting offers from, not offers, but he was getting looks from Notre Dame, I think. And the fact that he didn't get that job just shows that Notre Dame made a massive mistake because he's an amazing coordinator. So if Kirk can revitalize that offense, I truly think Minnesota is going to be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Are they going to be Ohio State? No, it's not possible because Ohio State gets everybody. But in a year where Wisconsin has troubles at quarterback, Iowa, puke, the rest of the Big Ten West is kind of just not good. Then you got the Big Ten East, which, you know, Michigan, Ohio State, they're always going to have more talent because it's a bigger program. But this could really be a year where Minnesota can step up and say, hey, you know what? We're going to Indianapolis. We can take control as long as they have that offense that can take those games against bad teams. Remember, 2 of their losses last year. Bowling Green, they scored, I want to say 10 points. Illinois, they scored, I want to say 6 points. They only gave up 14 points in both those games, if I'm remembering correctly. They scored 2 touchdowns. Minimum that game goes to overtime against Illinois and Bowling Green. Now, long-term, Bowling Green loss means nothing. Illinois loss means something. You score 2 touchdowns against Illinois. Illa-freaking-noy. They need to do that this year so they can take the control of the Big Ten West. So I realize I went on a bit of a tangent, but biggest question is, can that offense become something? Next up, released on T-Portal CFB Twitter, which you should be following. We released a bracket because what else do you do in March? You know, you fill out your college basketball brackets, then you look on Twitter and find the college football related brackets because everybody releases them because it's good content. We're going to talk about our bracket, the most electric players in college football history. We're going to go side by side in both divisions or both regions, 16 a pop, so it's 32 total. And we're going to be giving our opinions on the matchups. Now, some of them, they're going to be kind of lopsided because it's a 116. The 16 doesn't usually win unless you're playing Virginia and you're UMBC. So let's start off in the first region on the left side. We got number 1 seed Reggie Bush, obviously explosive player, should have a Heisman, going up against Saquon Barkley. You know, a little bit more recent, still a heck of a player, made some amazing plays for Penn State. Anybody want to say Saquon, or are we just going to kind of keep this short and say it's tough to beat Reggie Bush?
It's got to be Reggie.
Yeah, give me Reggie all day.
Yeah. I love Saquon, but I mean, it's Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Saquon was so fun to watch, but Reggie Bush, he was just electrifying. So we'll move him on. 8-9 matchup, Steve McNair. Steve McNair versus Rocket Ismail. What do we got? What are we thinking?
This one's tight. I'm going to lean towards McNair, but I mean, I wouldn't go against putting Rocket ahead, moving him on. It's close though for me.
Yeah, when we first had this bracket, we actually didn't have Steve McNair. And that was, I couldn't believe that. When I was starting to think of some players, my mind just went to Steve McNair. Like, how did we forget Steve McNair? And honestly, I think you could make the argument he could be a higher seed than an 8, because this is an 8-9, McNair being 8, Ismail being 9. I'd probably lean McNair as well.
Yeah, I think I would personally agree. I mean, I never got to watch either of them live. So, Brian, do you have anything to add, or are we going to move McNair on? You're muted.
You're muted, Brian.
You're muted in Zoom.
Sorry, my dog was barking, so I had to mute myself. Yeah, no, I think I am going to go with Steve McNair, but it is very close. Rocket Ismail, obviously as a kick returner and a wide receiver, you can make very, very explosive plays out of those positions. So, but yeah, Steve McNair, he's just that dude, man. So give me Steve McNair.
McNair moves on to the second round. Next up, this is a tough one. Michael Vick is a 5 seed, but he's got a very tough matchup at the 12 seed. It's Adrian Peterson. First thoughts on this possible upset?
Yeah, whoever set this up was looking for a 5-12 upset, I feel like. It's one of those
You're
classic.
damn right about that.
I'm still gonna take Michael Vick. I'm a little biased because I saw Adrian Peterson run all over my Longhorns for too long. But Michael Vick, I mean, I also really loved him in the NFL as well. I'm gonna take Michael Vick, but I mean Adrian Peterson, man, he was amazing.
Yeah, it's so hard to really justify like a guy being lower than another guy in here. Like obviously you have the Reggie Bushes, the Vince Youngs, like those are pretty easy. But once we get to like the 5s and beyond, it's so hard to gauge, who do you put, who's more electric than the other guy. And so I feel like people were bound to be upset, and Adrian Peterson being a 12, that didn't really sit right with me either. But I always go with the 12s over 5s, and in my brackets, I always make sure to have at least one because those always seem to hit. I'm gonna go AP here. I think it's super, super close. I do think Michael Vick's college career is crazy underrated. Everybody remembers what he did with the Falcons in his early part of his career, and even with the Eagles. But I'm gonna go AP.
Brian, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, it is hard. I kind of want to lean with AP because I actually saw him play, so that he's, I can relate to him more because I saw what he did. I saw, what he did on the field more recently. I was able to remember that. But, kind of diving into Michael Vick, I saw his My Football Life and just what he did at Virginia Tech. He basically transcended the quarterback position, and what he did, no, you didn't really see that before. A quarterback with a huge arm and could juke everybody out. So I'm gonna lean with Michael Vick because I just think that he changed the quarterback position both in college and in the NFL. And he took that Virginia Tech team to a national championship, as a freshman. So I think it was his freshman year, I think. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Michael Vick, but it's like those last second buzzer beating threes for Michael Vick.
Yeah, it's like it was Loyola beat somebody a few years ago. That's what's going to be. I'm going to agree with the consensus. Michael Vick, just what he did for the quarterback position, nothing short of legendary. Yes, Adrian Peterson, heck of a player, and then he continued that into the NFL. But I think you got to give Michael Vick his flowers for what he did for the Hokies. So he's going to move on to face the winner of the 4-13 matchup. Battle of the running backs. You got Bo Nose and you've got Marcus Allen. This is a slightly tougher matchup than the average one. Anybody want to add onto this?
I'm going for the upset, and I'm gonna take Marcus Allen on this one. Might be the minority, but I mean, I didn't really get to watch either of them play. But my dad, he was a huge Marcus Allen fan. I don't know why or how that happened, but yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I might switch, but right now I'm going Marcus Allen.
I just feel like when you think of the best athletes, period, Bo Jackson's name comes up, and a lot of that had to do with what he did at Auburn, and obviously his pro career is, in terms of what he was able to do, is pretty much unmatched. I feel like Deion Sanders is really one of the only guys that has done what he's done across 2 sports. And this isn't about baseball. This is about college football, and I think Bo Jackson's career at Auburn was fantastic. There's a good reason why he's a 4. I just think I wouldn't say it's like there's a wide margin between the two, because Marcus Allen is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated running backs, college and NFL. I feel like he should be more in the conversation of the greatest running backs ever. But I think in terms of college, I would go with Bo Jackson. That dude was, in my opinion, the definition of electric.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, I mean, it's Bo Jackson. I mean, we remember this bracket is most explosive players, and you can throw,
Electric.
yeah, most electric players. Yeah, so you can throw on a Bo Jackson highlight reel on YouTube and sit there for 30 minutes, just watching that. So, yeah, man, I'm gonna go with Bo Jackson on that one too.
Mark Allen was never the star of Tecmo Bowl. Bo Jackson moves on. Next up, this is a very good matchup in my opinion.
Yes.
6 seed Tavon Austin versus 11 seed Justin Blackman. I want to start this one off because I think this is an upset. I think Justin Blackman, my gosh, he was so fun to watch at Okie State. Yes, Tavon Austin has legendary YouTube videos of him just being so good at West Virginia. But I think what Blackman did was better as a just receiver, and Austin was better returning, speed. I think Blackman was the more complete player. Obviously, neither of them really panned out in the NFL, but this is most electric place in college football history. I'm going with the upset, Justin Blackman.
I think what you just said kind of justifies Tavon Austin now, because this isn't necessarily a conversation for like the most complete. I think when you think of electricity, you think of speed and just flashy highlights and, just excitement, creating a buzz. And I feel like Tavon Austin in recent memory would be, if this was like the last, 10, 12 years, I think he'd be a 1 or 2 seed up there with like DeAnthony Thomas and, Lamar Jackson. I'm taking Tavon Austin. I watched both of them, but I think this one isn't as close as you make it seem to be.
I think I agree with Dylan. I think I love Justin Blackman. I thought he's gonna be really good at in the NFL. But what did he get drafted to the Jaguars?
Yeah, I mean,
Something like that.
his
Yeah,
career
poor
ended
guy.
when he got drafted.
Tavon Austin went to the Rams too, I think. So
Yep.
wasn't that much better. But yeah, I remember. And I mean, Justin Blackman's easily the better player, but Tavon Austin, I mean, his highlights and everything, anytime he touched the ball, he can get like a little bootleg run play, and you never know what's gonna happen. And as a fan, when he's playing against your team, you're like, oh no, oh gosh, he's gonna get the ball. Somebody tackle him, somebody. It's just, I'm going Tavon Austin.
Yeah, with Tavon, and when at West Virginia, he was basically receiver, running back, kick returner. I mean, he was everywhere. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Tavon too. I think Justin Blackman was very, very good, especially for his. I mean, he was a big guy, even, and he was still very, very, very electric. But I think I'm going to go with Tavon as well. His highlight reel is insane. West Virginia has had some great athletes and very, very electric players at West Virginia. I'm sure we'll get to a couple of them later on, but man, that school produces some athletes for sure.
2 of them on the bracket, and probably could have had even more.
Yeah, I'm looking at one on the right side of the bracket, and that matchup is going to be a tough one to talk about. So Tavon Austin's going to move on. Next up, Barry Sanders, one of the greatest to ever touch a football, going up against Ricky Williams. This is another good matchup. I'm going to go Barry Sanders just because of I mean, my gosh, he was so good. Another Oklahoma State player, I just realized. So 2 straight that we're talking about, but I don't know. He was just so great. Like, this is also, yes, this is the most electric. He was just so great. That's another word you have to use to describe him. Ricky Williams was really, really, really good. I have to take Barry Sanders.
When I was a kid first getting into football, my dad showed me a long highlight reel of Barry Sanders with the Lions. And it wasn't until a couple years later when I saw his highlights from Oklahoma State, and he was almost faster and more like twitchy at Oklahoma State, which is nuts because he was insane with the Lions throughout his way too short career. I hate the Lions for what they did to him. But anyway, that's a whole different podcast. I'm taking Barry here, but no disrespect to Ricky Williams. He was really, really fun to watch and just a fun story. If you guys have ever seen his story, that's an awesome one. And he's just a fun guy to listen to, with interviews and stuff. But I got to go Barry here.
Y'all can't say I'm biased. I'm taking Barry too. Okay. I love Ricky. Love what he did, as all the records at Texas for rushing, they'll probably never be broken. So, but I mean, like Dylan said, you watch those Oklahoma State highlights, and man, I mean, it's only I've only seen one running back more electric than him, and he's number one. So I'm taking Barry.
Yeah, give me Barry. I agree. I mean, Ricky Williams was very, very good. And he's, just I do know what you're talking about, Dylan. His 30 for 30 was incredible. His whole story and everything. But I mean, Barry Sanders, he's Barry Sanders. There's really not much else to say.
Not much else to say. He's going to move on to. Is this the Sweet 16? Actually, yeah, it is the Sweet 16.
Yep.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
they're all moving on to Sweet 16 because we're already at 32 teams. Next matchup. I'm going to let Dylan go first on this one because it involves his guy, Marcus Mariota from Oregon, and a very good 10 seed, Ed Reed.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we had an offensive player versus a defensive player. I feel like we didn't get enough of those matchups in this bracket. I wanted to make sure we got some defensive players too. Wanted to show them some respect. If you're watching this YouTube, you already know I'm going with because I'm wearing Oregon gear. If you're listening on the podcast, Marcus Mariota is the reason why I'm a college football fan. He's the reason why I'm even sitting here. It's an easy answer for me. I hate that he's a 7 seed. I think he should be higher, but I mean, what he did at Oregon just, they were really special before that. The national championship year, a few years before he really took off. And then that 2014 season, that Heisman season was just, I think the only college football season I've watched personally that was better and more, I wouldn't say electrifying, but the one that was better was Joe Burrow. I think more electrifying, I'd probably say Lamar was the only one. But Mariota, easy.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, I agree. Marcus Mariota, actually, he's my top 3 favorite college players of all time. Like, I love them so much. I'm a big Texas guy. Marcus Mariota was my screensaver for a long time on my phone. Like, I love watching him play. I remember he came in as a freshman. Not a freshman. Did he play his freshman year?
Freshman year.
Freshman year. I remember watching him play. They said, this kid from Hawaii runs a 4.4. I was like, there's no way. And then he just took off. Man, a lot of people love Oregon and Texas as well for some reason. But yeah, I love Marcus Mariota. There's no way he's getting bounced in the first round in my watch. If I have anything to say about it.
You go, bro.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Andrew.
I almost want to play devil's advocate just because I loved those Miami teams from the early 2000s. I am going to say Marcus Mariota, but Ed Reed, I feel like he kind of got disrespected with the 10 seed. I think he needs to be a little bit higher. And we're going to see one of his teammates coming up soon. Same position group, by the way. So little hint.
No, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think Ed Reed is a little bit, underrated. I think he should be a higher seed as well. It kind of sucks that he got put up against Marcus Mariota because it's, when you compare the two, I don't think it's that close. Marcus Mariota, he, kind of followed along the lines. The 2010 quarterbacks were incredible. With Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota and Joe Burrow, and we had some really good quarterback play in the 2010s. So yeah, but give me Mariota as well.
In fact, Jameis Winston's only a loss in college was to Marcus Mariota by 39 points. So just put that out there.
So we're going to rule that 3.5 to half because I'm going to give a half point to Ed Reed. Mariota moves on. Next up, 2-15 matchup. Another player I think kind of got disrespected. 15 seed CMC Christian McCaffrey going up against Vince Young. I mean, Yeah, is there going to be any debate, really?
No,
None here.
no, I
Yeah,
don't think so.
I know there's none from you, Adam. I mean, McCaffrey 15 is disrespectful, but it's tough when there's so many electric players. So I think this is just a consensus. Vince Young moves on. Now to the right side of the bracket, we're going to start with the 116. Desmond Howard, obviously. Oh my gosh, he was fun to watch at Michigan. Going up against Colt Brennan from Hawaii. Colt Brennan was amazing. I don't think you can beat Desmond Howard. At least right here. I don't think it's possible.
No.
No. Yeah,
No.
I agree.
Yeah, that's an easy one for Desmond Howard. Next up, the matchup I've been kind of hinting at. Pat White, Sean Taylor. Fight.
Pat White is probably the only non-Georgia player that I ever enjoyed playing with in NCAA football video games. He was just so much fun to play with, so fast. So I have a nostalgia factor with Pat White. Obviously, Sean Taylor, rest in peace, Sean Taylor. He was, I mean, that Miami squad we talked about earlier. That Miami squad was loaded, with talent. But I'm gonna go with nostalgia here and I'm gonna go with Pat White. I think I'm gonna go with Pat White.
I'm gonna go with Sean Taylor because I mean I was electric. When I think of electric, I think of hard hitting, Showtime, and that was Miami. That was Sean Taylor. He was that guy. When you got hit by him, it felt like you got shocked by electricity, like you were paralyzed. So, I mean, and I loved him too. I'm kind of biased, but I had to go with Sean Taylor.
Do you imagine lining up as a wide receiver or a tight end and having Ed Reed and Sean Taylor in the same secondary? Like two of the hardest hitting, just
Running out of
aggressive-
bounds.
Yeah, running out of bounds, dink and dunk stuff, all that. Yeah,
I'm going
none
down.
of that stuff. Not taking any chances. I'm going Sean Taylor. I think Pat White is, I think he's also another guy where you can fit him in that Michael Vick category, where it's just like, he was transcendent. He was a guy that was just crazy speed that you just really didn't see for that time. But Sean Taylor at the same time was another kind of player that you just really didn't see. He was a complete package. And his college career was electrifying. I don't know if there's a safety that really compares when you talk about electricity. Maybe Ed Reed. I think Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, that's if that was a matchup itself, we could be talking about that for a while. But I'm gonna go Sean Taylor in a close one.
Yeah, Sean Taylor's going to move on. He's one of my favorite players ever to watch. Just hard hitting, just that entire Miami team, loaded with talent, had the swagger, played like every game was primetime because they played in a lot of primetime games. My gosh, Sean Taylor is just one of my personal favorite players ever too. So he's going to move on. Next up, 5-12 matchup, 5 seed Tommy Frazier going up against the 12 seed Marshall Faulk. This is another one that's like, yes, we know who kind of should win, but Marshall Faulk was good.
Yeah, he was. And I picked the 5 Michael Vick over Adrian Peterson, so I'll go opposite and I'll take Marshall Faulk over Tommy Frazier. I didn't really get to watch. I haven't really seen many. I've seen a couple of Tommy Frazier highlights, but I know I've seen Marshall Faulk a lot. And I mean, yeah, I think it's close. So I'm gonna pick the 12. Get a little chaos, a little madness in our bracket. We're not too chalked.
Yeah, my dad's a Nebraska fan. I'd be remiss if I didn't show some Cornhusker love. Tommy Frazier, I mean, those Nebraska teams were insane. I think they won like 45 out of the 50 games that Tommy Frazier played when they were there. 1 or 2 national championships, I believe, at least one. Just crazy numbers. His jersey's retired. It's just one of the greats ever. And I think when you talk about electricity, he's a guy that definitely brought that for that era. I think Marshall Faulk putting him low is It's tough. And one guy I kind of wanted to put over him in the bracket was Darren McFadden. He was one of those guys that was like the first one out for me. And I know somebody on
Yes.
Twitter was yelling at us about that. That was a tough one to leave out. I'm gonna go Tommy Frazier here. I think his career was one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to go with Tommy Frazier as well. You know, when we talk about Marshall Faulk, you know, shout out to San Diego State, probably the best player out of San Diego State. And you know, we can be kind of think about his NFL career that panned out, you know, as Tommy Frazier's didn't. But when we're talking about college and electric, I'm going to go with Tommy Frazier as well. Yeah, those Nebraska teams were incredible. And yeah, I'm going to go with Tommy Frazier.
Disrespect Matt Ariza like that. No.
I will say, you brought up Darren McFadden. I think if you put Darren McFadden here instead of Marshall Faulk, I'm more tempted to take him over Tommy
True.
Frazier.
Mhm.
So, and I was also kind of shocked we didn't have Darren McFadden. He was, my gosh.
Loved
But
him.
yeah, I have to take Tommy Frazier here. Just what he did for Nebraska, what he, you know, winning national championships at Nebraska, which nowadays that's not possible. So just an amazing player. So he's going to move on, and he's going to face the winner of another matchup that is with a player that should be seeded higher. RG3 is a 4 seed. That's fine. Michael Crabtree is a 13 seed. I think we might see our first RG3 at Baylor, man. Yeah.
That's a tough matchup for Michael Crabtree.
It's a tough matchup for RG3 too.
True.
It is. But I mean, with RG3, I mean, nobody expected him to even be remotely as good as he was, and he ran away with the Heisman that year. Man, that Baylor team was it was. I can't even put into words, man. That was electricity. Watching him just absolutely smoke everybody on the field. He looked like he was playing against high school team half the time. Michael Crabtree was great too. He cost my Longhorns a trip to the national championship. Still have to forgive him about that. I'm tired of seeing that clip too. It's kind of annoying. Should have tackled him. I blame Earl Thomas, but I'm not gonna get on a rant about that. But I'm taking RG3. It is close. Love Crabtree. He's from my hometown. But going RG3.
I got to smoke Liam here because Liam did not have Michael Crabtree on this bracket. I was the one that brought that on to the bracket.
Really?
Because so he was the first one that created. He took all of our suggestions that we had in our group chat and narrowed it down. And Michael Crabtree was not. I don't even think he was suggested, to be honest, in our group chat. So that's another fault of ours. But yeah, the 13 seed, I think he got disrespected. I'd probably put him no lower than 10, to be honest with you. But this is a tough matchup. I wish RG3 got one more year so I could see him play against, like Marcus Mariota in Oregon and, Mariota's freshman year, because that would have just been the most electrifying game you could think of. Like that Baylor team against Oregon with like Mariota and DeAnthony Thomas and Kenyon Barner. Like that would have just been, and the uniforms would have been nuts. Like that's just one of my dream matchups. But RG3, man, it's honestly close to me because Crabtree's career at Texas Tech and just that freshman year he had, I don't think any receiver in the FBS has had a better freshman year than that as a receiver. But I got to go RG3.
Yeah, when I look back at Michael Crabtree, that the one play against Texas, was probably one of the most iconic calls with Brett Musburger and that one play that one play kind of really put Crabtree on the map, but kind of elevated his status. But when you look at the whole career as a whole, I mean, Robert Griffin III was, man, he was with him and Josh Gordon and that was. You could back to what I said earlier is you could throw on an RG3 highlight tape and be mesmerized for 30 minutes. It was I'm gonna go with RG3.
So RG3 is moving on, but I'm taking Crabtree. I'm going with the upset. When you think of great college football wide receivers, he's one of, if not the first name you think of. What he did at Texas Tech was unmatched. Next up, oh my gosh, these matchups. Charles Woodson, Randy Moss. Now, imagine if they played in college. Imagine if they played against each other. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it might be a fight.
I want to start with this one just because one of these players is probably my personal favorite defensive back ever, Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson won the Heisman as a defensive player. I feel like that should just move him on right there. Like when you think of defensive Heismans in the last 20 years, you don't think of anything. You think of, oh, if I had another 10 years, I get Charles Woodson. What he did as a defensive player, nobody can match. Nobody can match ever. I mean, if we're going back another 50 years, probably can add defensive players, but Woodson, that's my vote.
Yeah, Randy Moss is my favorite NFL player of all time. I had 3 Randy Moss jerseys in my closet right now. One's on the Raiders. Not proud about that one. But this is college, and like Andrew said, I mean, I don't think it's close. It has to be Charles Woodson.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Charles Woodson, he was just electric. And he also didn't just do. I mean, he returned kicks. He did a lot on both sides of the ball as well. I know he played some offense too. At certain times. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Charles Woodson as well.
Charles Woodson is my favorite defensive back of all time. As a Packers fan, definitely one of my favorite players of all time. I'm just looking at Randy Moss's career at Marshall, and his stats are even crazier than I thought because he only played 2 years at Marshall. He wasn't able to play his freshman year, and his freshman year had 1,709 yards and 28 touchdowns. Second year, 1,820 yards and 26 touchdowns. That's 54 touchdowns in 2 years. Like that's absolutely mind-boggling and nuts. But Charles Woodson I think it just defined greatness as a defensive player and as a defensive back. He just kind of set the standard for what greatness looks like as a defensive player in college football. And the electricity factor is definitely there as well. So I think this one's close, but I'm going to go Charles Woodson.
I think he's also got one of the most iconic college football pictures with him having the rose in his mouth. So I think you have to kind of add that into the equation. Next up, this is a 3-4 matchup that's kind of interesting. Johnny Manziel, Johnny Money, Percy Harvin. Adam, you want to start since it's A&M?
Yeah, Johnny Manziel's easily the only A&M player I've ever liked. I mean, I tried to hate him when he first came up. I was like, he's not even that good, He just closes his eyes and throwing the ball up to Mike Evans, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that I still had to watch the games that he played in just shows how electric that he is. I actually sat down and I scheduled to watch Texas A&M play college football as a Longhorn fan, and I low-key rooted for him, but, I kind of didn't. It was kind of, but I mean, he's on and off the field, obviously, about his off the field stuff, but he just made the game fun. He's Showtime, Hollywood, Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football. I love him. So Percy Harvin, I thought had an underrated career though. Thought he's really good at Florida. But I'm gonna take Johnny on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm going Johnny. I don't think it's really that close. I am not really an SEC proponent. Like I watch the games, but like I'm not a guy who's screaming into the clouds like, yo, you got to watch SEC. It's the best conference, blah, blah, blah. Like, but Johnny Manziel made me tune in every single Saturday to watch Texas A&M. And honestly, I really don't know if there's been any other player, not just in the SEC, but in college football sense that I've really tried to do that with. Like his career was just unbelievable. Every game was must watch. I remember, I think it was the Belk Bowl against Duke. and he just put on a show that game. That was so much fun to watch. Not to mention the Alabama game. Yeah, his career was just so much fun. I got to go, Gianni.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the belt goal. I was just going to say that too. That comeback against Duke was incredible. I wish he played more. I mean, we only saw him for 2 seasons, and then one of the seasons he was suspended, I think, for a couple of games. So I wish we saw more of Johnny. But yeah, I mean, that play against Alabama with when we got tangled up and he fumbled, and I mean, that was just incredible. He kind of elevated him to that status as well, kind of like Crabtree touchdown did, but he kind of sustained it, I think, a little bit longer. So I think I'm going to go Johnny Manziel. It's unfortunate that he didn't pan out, but yeah, Johnny Football is we'll remember Johnny Football for a long time.
I think Johnny Football exactly that. How many players in the last 10, 15 years do you not call them by their name? You call Johnny Manziel Johnny Football, Money Manziel, the Money Man. Like, he's one of the only players that everybody knows when you're talking about Johnny Football, you're talking about Johnny Manziel. When you're talking Money Manziel, it's Johnny Manziel. He was so electric that he created a brand for himself when you weren't even allowed to have a brand for yourself in the NCAA. So I think that kind of moves him on just right there.
Imagine the NIL money he would get if he was
oh my
if he
God.
could.
Oh, you kill it.
Would have been stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be the richest player in football.
Yeah.
I don't know. But next up, so we're gonna have Manziel move on. Deion Sanders. Florida State fans may not be super fond of him right now, but they were definitely fond of him when he was playing. Going up against DeAnthony Thomas. I'll let Dylan start with this one because DeAnthony Thomas, Oregon.
Yeah, this is a hard one. This is a really, really hard one. I mean, D'Anthony Thomas his highlight reel is nuts. It's so crazy. I wish he would have came back for that 2013 year because I definitely think he should have. I think he would have been a lot higher of a draft pick if he stayed. But for me, it's hard to go against Deion Sanders, and the kind of player that he was at Florida State was just one of those lockdown players with just that flair and savvy. That was just another guy that you had to watch him play, and he was just had that personality that you just loved. And D'Anthony Thomas, you could argue that too. The guy that used to, if you're an Oregon fan, you probably remember his tweets of all caps all the time and called himself the Black Mamba. And he had that swagger to him too. This is probably the closest one for me. I'm gonna go Deion Sanders. I'm gonna get crucified by Oregon Twitter, but I gotta go Deion. How can you not?
Yeah, I mean, it's prime time. It's prime time. It's kind of, and I love Anthony Thomas too. I used to pick him up in Madden. He would always be a free agent. I always put him in Madden. He'd be my running back because he was that electric. Just give him the ball and just let him run around and figure something out. But Deion, it's prime time. For me, he signifies electric when I think about a defensive player on and off the field.
Yeah, no, it is harder. I think it is harder than when obviously Deion Sanders is Deion Sanders, right? He's Deion, but I think it is a little bit closer than people might think. D'Anthony Thomas he was so. I'll agree. I'll say that probably the early Oregon teams, the early 2010s Oregon team from 2010 to 2015, 2016 were some really, really fun teams. And I have a special place in my heart for those teams because they played in the Alamo Bowl a lot. And I would go to the Alamo Bowl almost every year. And I saw a lot of Oregon, that game against TCU, that comeback. They were on the wrong end of it, but it was still a lot of fun to watch. But anyway, and then also D'Anthony Thomas, when he wore that gold watch in the Alamo Bowl and people made a big deal about it. That was cool. But I think I'm going to go Deion. It is really close. I was watching I was watching a documentary about the Braves, the Atlanta Braves a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how Deion, the chop that the Braves do, they go, oh, it was started because of Deion. Because I know Florida State does that. And then when Deion came to the Braves, the Braves fans started doing that. So now we kind of became their thing too. So I can't think of another player that kind of has that effect. I know that was in Major League Baseball, so it's not relevant, but kind of is. But he's that type of guy. He was that type of guy. He was the type of guy at Florida State. So I'm going to go with Dion on this one. But it's very, very close, I think.
I forgot about the gold wash. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun night on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my vote to DeAnthony, even though Dion is Dion. When I think of who has the best highlight reels, I think DeAnthony's is up there with Tavon Austin. I think he was just that explosive, that electric, that quick, just that fun to watch at Oregon. So he'll get my vote, but of course it will still be prime time. Moving on to the final matchup we go of this episode, rounding off the first round, Lamar Jackson, Jadeveon Clowney. I mean,
it's not close.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not.
Conley had that one big play. It was against Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan, that was pretty amazing. But this is Lamar Jackson, man. I mean, I think the only more electrifying quarterback of our modern time was maybe RG3. But I mean, I saw him getting to see him live. Granted, my school won, stormed the field. Shout out to UH. But getting to see him live was one of the most amazing things. He looked so fast. Like, you blinked and you missed him. And he broke his two defenders on the ground. He's running down the field. It has to be Lamar.
Yeah, it has to be. Louisville. You don't really think about Louisville football that much when you think about electric players. And he changed that program. What he did, and I think what was that play? If I remember correctly, he kind of scrambled and he got two defenders to run into each other. I think if I remember correctly, I think that's what happened. And then he's probably the only guy that has like a highlight, like a historic highlight from high school, college, and the NFL. He has that high school clip when he I
remember that he walked into the end zone.
Yeah, he walked into the end zone and he was just doing this. And man, he's so fun to watch. And I'm so happy to see him continue that into the NFL. He's won at pretty much everything he's done. He won the Heisman Trophy. He won an MVP in the NFL as well. But yeah, it's not close. Jadeveon Clowney's great. He did a lot of great things. Being the number 1 overall pick that's great. He obviously deserved that. That play against Michigan was amazing. But yeah, it's not close. Lamar Jackson all the way.
That play by Lamar Jackson in high school, I grew up seeing that on social media so much. And I don't think it was until Lamar won the Heisman that I figured out that was Lamar Jackson. Yeah. I was blown away that was him. I think it's got to be Lamar. If Jadeveon Clowney didn't have that play in the Bloomin' Onion Bowl, I honestly don't think he probably would have made this list. So I'm going to go Lamar. I think this is as big a margin as we're going to have.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. But as great as Lamar was, he was amazing. That play from Jadeveon was so good. Not even just the play, the circumstances. South Carolina should have had the ball. They got absolutely messed up because the refs don't know what a first down looks like when they bring out the chains. And then the call from Tirico, South Carolina deserves to have the ball, and they do. Great call. Yeah. It's Lamar, though. It's Lamar, not close. I mean, you talked about Adam. He's one of those guys with RG3, just the way they transcended the position and how you play quarterback. You have to move him on. Jadeveon Clowney, electric player. Lamar is just in a different echelon. So I think that is going to end us off. We're just going to do the 1 rounds today. Appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to follow TPortalCFB on Twitter so you can get the full bracket, make your own, send it to us, and we'll tell you how it's probably better than ours. Make sure to follow all of our Twitters. Make sure to follow, whatever platform you're listening on, watching on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. You know what to do. Appreciate everyone for watching. Have a great day.